Welcome to TEDxYouth at LCJSMS 2017, Going Together.
Has anyone ever told you that you remind them of a certain person from a movie or a TV show, but you don't see the resemblance at all? For instance, I've been told by one of my friends that I'm just like Phoebe Buffay, a character from the show Friends, who is a very spacey, humorous person, yet she doesn't quite know it. I, however, don't see the correlation much at all. I see myself more as an on-point, curious, bubbly person. This is all due to the fact that sometimes others perceive us differently from how we perceive ourselves. Over the past couple months, I've been researching self-image. More specifically, how others perceive you versus how you perceive yourself, how we form our positive self-images, and why we have negative self-images. So how do we even create the way we see ourselves in the first place? We continually evaluate ourselves in multiple domains, such as physical appearance. How do I look? Am I ugly or pretty? And performance. How am I doing? Am I a failure or do I succeed academically and or socially? The way one might answer these questions ultimately leads them to having an optimistic or pessimistic view of themselves. But before we get into any specifics, let's first define self-image. Self-image is the way you perceive or see yourself and is built up over time based on the experiences you go through. They can be optimistic or pessimistic. Children start to see themselves as individuals around middle school. During this time, they form and change their self-images based on the experiences they go through, such as they go to a new and larger school, they meet lots of new people, and they gain so much more responsibility to create their own decisions. During this time, they form either an optimistic or pessimistic image of themselves. When we see ourselves in an optimistic way, that means we focus on our abilities and potentials. Having an optimistic image allows you to focus on what you can achieve rather than pushing yourself down constantly all the time. It also means that you believe in yourself and that you learn to love and accept yourself so others will learn to accept you. It also means that we not bully ourselves, we focus on the can, not the can't, and we realize that we are all human and we all make mistakes. While I was learning about this, the first thing that popped into my head is that it must be great to always think of ourselves in an amazing way. However, believing you are the best too much can encourage underachievement. Let's say that someone verbally commits to a college. They'll probably feel so great about themselves because they're already committed. Eventually, over time, they start to slack off on schoolwork because they think that they didn't have to keep working, rather than someone who is still trying to find a school. Eventually, the person that already was committed gets their commit taken away because they weren't working as hard, and the person that was working as hard got their spot. This is why having a realistic image of yourself can encourage hard work, change, and improvement. This does not mean that we should always look at ourselves in a negative way. If we do this, eventually we'll become depressed, devastated, and even sadly may have suicidal thoughts. It also means that we focus on our faults, weaknesses, failures, and imperfections. This is why having a good self-image will allow you to find a balance between the two to establish happiness and to be content with how you view yourself. While I was learning this, I figured people that have negative self-images don't get to live up to their goals and reach their expectations. Do people create false self-images to cover up how they really feel about themselves? If this is the case, then that must mean they create false self-images on purpose to convey what they think the other person wants them to be. Knowing all of this, it led me to the big question: why would someone change the way they see themselves in front of different people? Let's say there is a girl, and she is very outgoing and not that street smart around her friends. But when she is around her family, she is very smart and very curious. Because of the way she puts herself out there, that is the way she'll be perceived. Now, going forward in her life, she has two different perceptions from two different groups of people. This continues out through life with children and adults through their childhood, teenage years, and life. Knowing this, I decided to create a 3-question survey which began with different animals and character traits next to them. For example, an owl was very smart and thoughtful, while a dolphin was very energetic and happy. My questions were: 1. Which animal do you see yourself as? 2. Which animal do you think others would see you as? And 3. I asked them to go around and ask different people in their life which animal they saw them as. My point of this experience was to get them to open up really how they felt about themselves and to think about how they put themselves out there and see if others see them the same way in the end. One of my responses was someone that thought of herself as a deer, which is very quiet and calm. She thought others would see her as an owl, and in the end, when she went around and asked different people, her work friend said that he saw her as an owl, but her family said that they saw her as a sloth, which is very easygoing and calm. So, this person may have realized that because different people perceived her from how she saw herself, she plays two different roles depending on the group of people she's surrounded by. Knowing this after my experience, I realized that sometimes people subconsciously change the way that they see themselves during different groups of people. So, I decided to take the way I view myself into action. Earlier in my talk, I had mentioned that I see myself as a curious, bubbly, open-minded kind of person. So I went to school acting and portraying the complete opposite. I was dark and moody. I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't even look Mr. Welsh in the eye when I shook his hand. Some people had noticed my negative attitude, while others just kept on going on with their day as if nothing had changed. One of my friends actually checked my head for a fever to make sure if I was okay. Mr. Wallach, my English teacher, had waved his hand in front of my face because he thought something was wrong. In retrospect, looking at myself in a negative way had made me feel like I was failing myself and I couldn't find anything to be happy about. If this was just me acting like I had a negative self-image, think about the people out there in real life that really see themselves in a pessimistic way and how they really feel. In essence, having a negative image led to a dark, consistent feeling and led others to believe that that person was always depressed, which perpetuates the negative image. So why does it even matter to think about our self-images in the first place? I'm pretty confident that most of the people in the audience have either wanted to have children, or want to have children when they're older in life. These children are America's future. We want them to have realistic self-images so they can go forward in life and complete their goals. Going to college, getting a job, and even maintaining and creating relationships with their friends and family. The future awaits us all. Now it just depends on if we take the future and turn it into something that we want it to be. But we cannot do that if we let our pessimistic and false images get in the way of our actions. I can assure you that having a realistic image of yourself will allow others to see you for how you really want to be seen and will make false images less of a reality. So let me ask you one simple question. How do you perceive yourself? Think about it. Thank you.